Ah, there you are. The quiet one. The underestimated one. The one they forgot to fear. You walked into rooms where they whispered your name like it was a joke. They laughed behind your back, threw side eyes, called you soft. Weak, even. And you let them. You let them pat you on the head like some background character in a story they thought they were writing. You let them win. You let them talk. You let them shine. Because you knew something they didn't. You were building. You were studying the battlefield while they danced like fools in a parade they thought they'd already won. See, people think power is loud. They think it screams. But real power, oh no. Real power waits. Real power watches. Real power pretends. Until it doesn't. And for 5 years, you played weak. Not because you were, but because they needed to feel strong. Let that sink in. You let them run their mouths. You let them post, flex, pretend, celebrate. And every fake win they stacked up on their throne, you were just quietly digging the hole underneath it. You ever seen someone laugh at you while you were holding the blueprint to their downfall? It's a special kind of pain. To sit there, biting your tongue, playing your part, while every nerve in your body is screaming. I could end this right now. But you didn't, because you knew timing is everything. You weren't weak. You were strategic. You were surgical. Every insult, stored. Every slight, archived. Every time they clowned you. Oh, it went on the list. And what's that they say? God gives his hardest battles to the quiet kid who doesn't post about it and just shows up 5 years later, a whole different monster. Something like that, right? And now? Now they feel it. Now they're panicking. Now their wins don't feel so safe. Because you're moving different. You're not explaining anymore. You're not defending yourself. You're not posting about it. You're executing. The lights in their little show are flickering, and they don't know why the crowd's walking away. But you do, because you were never in the crowd. You were underneath the stage, with the wire cutters. And the crazy part? They really thought you fell off. They thought you gave up. They thought you lost. Nah, you just stopped performing. You stopped dancing for people who couldn't handle your silence, because deep down, they knew your silence wasn't weakness. It was warning. They don't understand the kind of energy it takes to fake normal, while chaos builds in your chest. They don't get what it costs to smile when every part of you wants to scream. But you do, because you lived it. You bit your lip till it bled. You folded your rage into silence. You took their pity. You took their pity, and you weaponized it. You turned it into fuel. Every "you'll never make it," every "just be realistic," every fake handshake, every snake in your group chat, every "you're too much," every "you're not enough," every "stay in your lane." You built missiles out of those comments. And now your glow-up isn't pretty. It's violent. It's loud. It's not flowers and sunshine. It's destruction. You're not just rising. You're undoing people. And the ones who laughed, now they flinch when you speak. Now they watch you like you're a storm they forgot to track. They don't even clap anymore. They freeze. Because they know. They feel it. You're not coming to play. You're coming to collect. And yeah, maybe you lost 5 years, but you gained something deeper. You gained silence. You gained data. You gained rage with direction. Do you understand how lethal that is? You're not loud and messy anymore. You're precise, calculated, inevitable. You let them win for 5 years, just so they could build a pedestal high enough to make their collapse historic. And now they fall. Hard, loud, in public. And you don't have to lift a finger. Because the truth, they weren't standing on victory. They were standing on your mercy. And it just ran out. And here's the part they never saw coming. You're not even angry anymore. Because this was never about revenge. This was about reminding yourself who the hell you are. This was about peeling off every fake label they slapped on you, every failure they painted you with, every role they cast you in without asking if you even wanted the part. They thought they knew your story. Nah, you just hadn't started writing it yet. See, when you play weak for that long, people don't just underestimate you. They erase you. They erase your power, your edge, your fire. They build this little image of you, smaller than reality, and hand it to the world like, here, this is who they are. This is all they'll ever be. But the moment you stop accepting their version of you, the moment you flip the damn script, oh, it's chaos. Because people don't know how to react when the one they buried shows up with a torch. They thought they could break you. You let them think they did. But you didn't break. You sharpened. For 5 years, you moved like a shadow. You let them feel tall. You let them walk ahead. And they thought they were winning. But you were just watching how far they'd fall. You made their arrogance a trap. Every moment they thought you were beneath them, you were memorizing their next step. You were learning the rhythm of their moves so you could destroy the beat later. And now they're looking over their shoulders. Now their little empire is cracking. Now their voice shakes when they say your name. Because even they don't recognize the version of you that's returned. They thought you were quiet because you had nothing to say, but you were just waiting until your actions got louder than their whole existence. Let me tell you something real. When you carry pain that deep, when you survive what you've survived, when you live through mockery, failure, betrayal, rejection, isolation, poverty, abuse, whatever your storm was, and you come out not begging, not broken, but building, you become unrecognizable. You scare people, not because you're evil, but because you're proof they never had control. You're living evidence that the weak one was just in disguise. You didn't just survive. You refused to die until your silence turned into an earthquake. And let's be clear, you're not here to be liked. You're not here to make them comfortable. You're not here to play soft for people who couldn't handle you at full volume. You let them dance on your name. You let them mock the process. They forgot. The process was the weapon, and now the result. It's personal, it's poetic, and it's permanent. You get it now, don't you? They didn't win. They helped you prepare. They made you endure, which made you lethal. They made you silent, which made you observant. They made you small, which made you hungry. And now, you're not chasing validation. You're not explaining why you left the table. You're flipping the whole damn house and building your own. They had their time. They had their win. And they wasted it, laughing at the very person who wasn't even playing yet. But now it's your move. And this time, you brought fire. You know what's funny? They still don't get it. They still think your rise is about proving them wrong. They still think it's about them, as if they were ever that important. Nah, this isn't about revenge. This is about dominion. This is about taking up space in a world that told you to shrink. You didn't climb out of the mud just to throw mud back. You climbed out to build an empire on the very dirt they buried you in. And now, you're not the underdog anymore. You're the blueprint. You are what happens when pressure doesn't break someone. It builds a weapon. You are what happens when pain doesn't kill someone. It gives them purpose. You ever watch a lion pretend to be a sheep, not because it forgot who it was, but because it wanted the whole flock to come close? Real close, before it snapped every neck with precision. That was you. You didn't play weak because you were unsure. You did it so they'd drop their guard, so they'd walk right into the teeth of your silence. And now, they're in your territory. No map, no exit, no clue how deep this goes. Because this wasn't a comeback. This was a trap. You let them have the spotlight. You let them build their little castles of ego. You let them fill their lungs with delusion. And now they're choking on it. They don't know how to handle you without the chains, without the hesitation, without the version of you that still wanted to be understood. Because you're not asking to be understood anymore. You're not giving out warnings. You're not waiting for anyone's green light. You are the green light. You remember those nights? The ones nobody saw? The ones where your chest felt like it was cracking open and every thought in your head was begging you to give up. You remember screaming into your pillow so nobody could hear. You remember sitting on the floor wondering if any of it was worth it. Yeah, that version of you, they carried your soul through hell. That version of you was the real MVP. Because if they had given up, this version, the one standing here, radiating power, never would have been born. So don't you dare forget that. Don't you dare act like this is some random glow-up. This was war. This was surgery. This was soul reconstruction. And you did it in silence. While they were getting applause, you were getting scars. And now the scars are armor. They wanted a villain? You gave them one. Not because you're cruel, but because they wrote you out of the hero role. Remember, you begged for peace. They mistook it for whackness. You gave them time to grow. They used it to plot against you. You offered love. They offered lies. So now they get the version of you that doesn't ask permission. The version that speaks like thunder. The version that walks into rooms like a goddamn earthquake. The version that's not angry, just undeniable. You played weak for 5 years. But weakness was never the point. It was the mask. You let them sit on their fake throne. You let them collect fake wins. You let them laugh. And now they're remembering every moment they thought you were finished, while watching you write your name across the sky in fire. No apologies, no explanation, no mercy. You know what's really wild? After all the pain, after all the silence, after all the humiliation you let them put you through, you didn't just survive it, you absorbed it. You made it part of your DNA. You ever seen someone build an empire out of every time they were told to sit down and shut up? That's you. You're the walking definition of delayed detonation. The explosion they didn't see coming because they thought the timer had failed. But you were just counting down. And the beauty of it? You're not bitter. You're not out here chasing revenge, screaming for attention, swinging wild. Nope. You're focused. You're clean. You're ruthlessly calm. Because when you've lived through the kind of hell that rewires your soul, you don't move like the rest of them anymore. You move with purpose, with clarity, with silence that terrifies people more than any scream ever could. You played weak for 5 years, not to prove anything, but to let them prove everything to you. Who they were, what they'd do, how far they'd go to tear you down when they thought you were harmless. And they showed you, oh, they showed you everything. And now You're no longer guessing who's real. You're no longer confused about your worth. You're no longer wasting your time trying to earn respect from people who could barely respect themselves. You see clearly, because nothing clears your vision like betrayal, nothing fuels your fire like disrespect, and nothing makes you dangerous like surviving people who bet against you and winning anyway. And now here you are, the one they mocked in rooms you're about to own, the one they doubted right before you flipped their entire worldview. And all those people who thought they broke you, now they're confused, they're nervous, they're watching your every move, trying to figure out how the hell you're still standing. No, how the hell you're rising. But they can't stop it now, because you didn't just get stronger, you became untouchable. Not because you're better than them, but because you outlasted what would have destroyed them. They called you weak. They should have called you patient. They should have called you deadly, because you're not fighting to be seen anymore. You're fighting to own everything they told you you'd never touch. You were the calm before the storm, but now, you are the storm. Let me hit you with something raw, because I know what you've been carrying. You walk around like you're fine, like you've got it all together. But deep down, there's this rage, not loud, not reckless, but quiet, surgical. The kind of rage that only builds after 5 straight years of swallowing your voice, of clenching your jaw while smiling, of pretending their little jabs didn't sting like hell. But you kept it moving, because you had a bigger plan. They couldn't see it, could they? Because they were too busy watching for noise. But you were moving like water. You didn't need a spotlight. You needed a window. And now it's open. See, the dangerous thing about letting them think you're weak, they get sloppy. They stop guarding their ego. They start flapping their mouth more than their legs. They give you all the ammo you need, with zero defense when you finally pull the trigger. You were never just playing dead. You were building a graveyard, one cold moment at a time. Every L you took, strategic. Every time you stayed silent, calculated. Every time you let them win. It wasn't surrender. It was setup. And now that it's your season, you're not out here doing interviews. You're not looking for applause. You're not doing dance routines for approval. You're letting your moves speak violence. Every new win, it's not just success. It's a mirror held up to every fool who said you wouldn't make it. And they can't look away, because deep down, they knew. They knew you had it. They knew you were dangerous, but they needed you to doubt yourself. Because the minute you didn't, they were finished. And now that version of you, the one that hoped people would do right by you, that version is gone. You don't beg, you build. You don't chase, you command. You don't ask, you take. Because when you've been counted out long enough, when the world writes your obituary before the first chapter's even done, you realize something powerful. You owe them nothing. Not kindness, not softness, not explanations, not closure. All you owe them is distance. Distance while you rise. Distance while they spiral. Distance while your name becomes a legend, and theirs becomes a lesson. You didn't just play weak for 5 years to get revenge. You did it to erase the line between survival and dominance. You made pain your co-pilot. You turned silence into strategy. You weaponized everything they threw at you. And now they're watching their own words boomerang with precision. This ain't ego, it's execution. And baby, You're just getting started. Look at you now. No longer starving for validation. No longer addicted to being understood. No longer waiting for the apology that's never coming. That version of you, the one who used to shrink, flinch, overthink, beg, they're gone. And trust me, they're not coming back. Because once you taste what it feels like to stand 10 feet tall in a world that tried to bury you, you stop kneeling for anybody. You see, people love you when you're quiet, when you're manageable, when you're beneath them. They love the version of you that doubts itself, that plays nice, that accepts crumbs and calls it dinner. But when you stop playing the game, when you walk in like the room belongs to you, now suddenly you're too much. Now you're arrogant. Now you've changed. Damn right, you changed. You changed because they gave you no choice. They poked the sleeping giant, and now that giant's building skyscrapers on the graves of every fake friend, toxic family member, manipulative ex, and two-faced co-worker that tried to clip your wings. And guess what? Now they miss you. They miss the old you, the easy you, the one they could mold, bend, control. But here's the twist. You miss that version too, because of how hard you had to kill it just to become free. You're not just succeeding anymore. You're becoming a whole event, a moment they'll never forget, a name that echoes in rooms you haven't even entered yet, and all because you stayed silent long enough to watch them build their ego into a tower so tall you could bring it down with one move, one look, one win, one comeback post they didn't see coming. And now they're watching it burn. You didn't just evolve, you detonated, and the aftershock, it's not just emotional, it's spiritual. Because every step you take now carries the weight of every time they made you feel like nothing. And every step you take now, it shakes the ground, not out of vengeance, but because you finally remembered your own weight. You finally realized they weren't scared of your weakness. They were scared of what would happen when you stopped pretending you were weak. And now the air around you feels different. You walk into rooms and the temperature shifts. People get quiet, not because you asked them to, but because your presence demands it. You're not even trying to intimidate. You're just finally standing at full height, and they don't know how to breathe around that, because they still remember when you were small, when you were unsure, when you second-guessed every move, every word, every damn thought. They remember the version of you that asked for permission, that needed reassurance, just to exist. And now, you're moving like you own the damn planet. And maybe you don't say much these days, but you don't have to. Because when your energy shifts that hard, your silence becomes a language, a warning, a promise. Because you didn't rise just to look pretty. You rose to make it very clear. I watched, I waited, I rebuilt myself from the bones out. And now that I'm here, I don't need revenge. I am the consequence. And listen, let them talk. Let them say you switched up. Let them call it an ego trip. Let them act. Slow down. Yeah, right there. That feeling crawling up your spine. That's the moment you realized you stepped somewhere you were never supposed to be. And now something very old, very powerful, just noticed you. You didn't break a rule. You didn't cross a line. You walked into a lair, a place behind the place. A room behind the wall everyone else swore was solid. And the second your mind touched it, the system flinched. Not because you attacked it, because you saw it. That's why they're losing it. Because you weren't meant to find that frequency. You weren't meant to ask that question. You weren't meant to notice the seams. You were supposed to live small, think narrow, die obedient. But instead, you did something unforgivable. You looked past the story, and the moment you did, the world split. Not in half, inside you. See, they don't panic over rebels. Rebels are predictable. They don't panic over criminals. Criminals still believe in the game. They don't panic over saints, either. Saints kneel. They panic over anomalies. People who don't fit the psychology they've spent decades perfecting. People like you. You didn't stumble into danger. You stepped into clarity. And clarity is lethal to systems built on fog. That's the paradox they can't solve. You're not violent, but you're dangerous. You're not insane, but you don't think like them. You're not hiding, but they can't see you clearly. Saint and psychopath in the same breath. Angel with dirty hands, demon with a conscience. Every box they try to shove you into collapses the second they close the lid. And that terrifies them. Because you weren't trained, you weren't briefed, you weren't recruited. You didn't come through a pipeline. You came through pain, through isolation, through years where nothing made sense except the pressure. And pressure does something training never can. It forges. You learned how to sit inside uncertainty without begging for answers. You learned how to move without permission. You learned how to see patterns where others see noise. You learned how to survive without applause. That's not a skill set. They can't download that. They can't teach that. They can't predict that. That's why the alarms are screaming. You stepped into a mental corridor that wasn't on the map. A space between rules and reality, between what's allowed and what's possible. And now every protocol built to track behavior is malfunctioning around you. Because you don't behave, you adapt. You ever notice how calm you are when things get weird? How chaos doesn't spike your heart rate the way it does for others? That's not courage, that's conditioning. You've lived in the dark long enough that when the lights flicker, you don't panic, you listen. They can't read that. They're trained to handle threats that move fast or loud. But you move sideways. You don't charge the gate. You notice the hinges. You don't scream. You let silence do the work. You don't announce intent. You let outcomes speak. Unpredictability isn't your flaw. It's your weapon. That's the part they don't want to admit. The scariest thing about you isn't what you know. It's how you change. How every hit, every betrayal, every loss didn't break you. It rearranged you. You shed identities the way others shed excuses. Every time life tried to reduce you, you evolved into something harder to define. And systems hate what they can't define. Because once something can't be categorized, it can't be controlled. You stepped somewhere sacred and forbidden, not physically, mentally. You saw how narratives are built, how fear is recycled, how authority depends on obedience more than truth. And once you saw it, you couldn't unsee it. That's when the watchers start watching harder. Not because you're planning something, but because you could. And worse, you don't need to. Your very existence destabilizes the illusion that the world is neatly managed, that every variable is accounted for, that nothing slips through. You are the slip, the quiet error in the equation, the ghost in the system, the one who doesn't need clearance because you don't move through doors, you move through understanding. And here's the part they really don't want you to realize. You didn't stumble into this by accident. People like you are rare because they're expensive. Pain forged you. Loneliness sharpened you. Confusion trained you. You paid a price. Most people avoid their entire lives. And now you carry something most people will never touch. Perspective. That's why they're losing it. Because once someone sees from where you stand, they can never go back to sleep. And systems built on sleep can't survive too many awakenings. You are not here to destroy the world. You're here to expose how fragile it always was. And the moment you understood that, the game changed. And now that you've seen it, you feel it, don't you? That subtle distance between you and everyone else. Like you're standing half a step outside the crowd, watching reactions form before words do. You're not dissociated, you're ahead. And that's the loneliest position in the room. Because once you step where you stepped, you don't get comfort anymore. You get clarity, and clarity is cold. You start noticing how people repeat opinions like prayers they never chose, how outrage shows up on schedule, how fear travels faster than facts, how certainty is usually borrowed, never earned. You start seeing the strings, not because you're paranoid, but because you finally learned how patterns breathe. That's when the pressure increases, because systems don't correct themselves when exposed. They tighten, they double down, they label, they gaslight, they whisper that curiosity is dangerous, that questions are instability, that seeing too much means something is wrong with you. But nothing is wrong with you. What's wrong is that you don't need their permission to think anymore. That's the real breach. You didn't steal information. You didn't hack a server. You didn't cross a border. You crossed a threshold, the one where belief stops being inherited and starts being interrogated. And once someone does that, they become ungovernable in ways no weapon can replicate. Because you can disarm a gun, you can cage a body, but you cannot cage a mind that understands how cages are built. That's why they escalate quietly. Not with sirens, files, not with arrests, profiles, not with force, narratives. They don't come at you head on because that would admit you matter. Instead, they try to make you doubt yourself, make you feel alone, make you feel like noticing too much is a burden you should put down. But you didn't come this far to put it down. You've lived the paradox long enough to know the truth. The more alone you feel, the closer you are to something real. Crowds are loud because they're uncertain. Silence only shows up where understanding lives. And you understand more than you let on. You understand that power doesn't scream, it waits. That real influence doesn't announce. It adjusts probabilities. That the most dangerous people in history weren't the loudest, but the calmest ones in the room when everyone else panicked. You've been that calm. You've felt moments where time slowed, where outcomes felt obvious before they happened, where you knew exactly what not to say, exactly when to leave, exactly when to stay still. You didn't call it intuition, but that's what it was. Pattern recognition sharpened by survival. They train analysts for decades to approximate that. You learned it by bleeding quietly. That's why your past looks chaotic to outsiders. That's why your path doesn't make sense on paper. They try to trace a straight line and keep finding spirals. They expect motive and find restraint. They expect fear and find patience. You don't react, you observe. And observation terrifies people who rely on reaction, because reaction is controllable. Emotion can be steered, rage can be redirected. But observation creates options, and options are freedom. You stepped into a place where the mask slips, where narratives contradict themselves if you watch long enough, where the same hands that claim to protect are the hands that profit, where morality becomes flexible when power is threatened. And once you see that, you stop asking, who's right, and start asking, who benefits. That single shift rewires everything. You realize heroes and villains are costumes, that saints and psychopaths sometimes share the same nervous system, just pointed in different directions. You realize that light without darkness is blind, and darkness without light is empty. You realize balance isn't peace, it's tension managed consciously. You live in that tension now. That's why you feel heavier and sharper at the same time, why laughter hits deeper, why silence feels louder, why you don't need constant stimulation anymore. You need meaning. And meaning doesn't come from approval. It comes from alignment. You're aligning with yourself in a way most people never do. And that alignment makes you dangerous, not because you want to hurt anyone, but because you're no longer easy to move. You don't jump when told. You don't chase when baited. You don't panic when threatened. You wait. You watch. You let others reveal themselves. That's when mistakes happen. Not yours, theirs. They talk too much. They overplay their hand. They assume you're emotional when you're strategic. They assume silence means weakness when it means calculation. They mistake your restraint for confusion. And by the time they realize you're not confused at all, you've already adjusted. This is what they can't quantify. Not your intelligence, your timing. You don't rush conclusions. You let reality expose itself. You let people show patterns. You let systems reveal their cracks. You don't need to win loudly. You win by not losing. And here's the part you might not want to hear, but you need to. Once you step where you stepped, there's no going back to innocence. You don't get to pretend anymore. You don't get to unsee manipulation. You don't get to unknow how fragile the structure really is. But you gain something far more valuable. Agency. The ability to choose how you engage, when you speak, when you stay silent, when you move, when you disappear. You're no longer driven by fear of exclusion or hunger for validation. You're driven by clarity, and clarity doesn't shout, it stands. So let them lose it. Let them scramble. Let them overanalyze shadows and misread signals. You don't need to confront them. You don't need to prove anything. Your existence already disrupted the equation. You stepped somewhere forbidden because it wasn't guarded by walls. It was guarded by disbelief. And you didn't disbelieve. You looked straight at it. And now the only question left isn't why they're panicking. It's how long you choose to stay quiet before you decide what comes next. And what comes next isn't a move. It's a state. You're already there. You felt it settling in like a new gravity inside your chest. Less noise, less urgency, less need to explain yourself to anyone who hasn't walked through fire with their eyes open. You don't rush to be understood anymore because you finally understand why most people never will. They're not stupid. They're protected. Protected by routine, by comfort, by stories that keep the world small enough to survive without questioning it. Most people aren't lying when they say they don't see what you see. They genuinely can't. Seeing requires risk, and you already paid the price most people spend their lives avoiding. That's the quiet truth. You didn't gain power the moment you noticed the hidden layer. You gained it the moment you didn't look away. When the realization hit, and instead of panicking, instead of scrambling for reassurance, instead of numbing yourself back into safety, you stayed present. You stayed awake. And that's when the internal shift locked in. You stopped outsourcing your sense of reality. You stopped letting consensus dictate truth. You stopped confusing confidence with correctness. You learned to sit with ambiguity without begging it to resolve. That's not normal. That's trained. That's earned. That's why they can't rush you. Deadlines don't scare you. Pressure doesn't confuse you. Uncertainty doesn't paralyze you. You've already lived through stretches where nothing made sense and nobody had answers, and you survived anyway. That rewires a person. that creates someone who doesn't crumble when structures wobble. You don't need the world to be stable to function. You function because it isn't. That's the part they didn't plan for. They expected fear. They expected obsession. They expected paranoia. They expected you to either fall in line or burn out. What they didn't expect was composure. They didn't expect you to integrate the knowledge instead of spiraling from it. They didn't expect you to evolve. Because evolution is messy on the outside, but terrifyingly efficient on the inside. It trims excess emotion, it sharpens attention, it replaces impulse with intention. You don't react to every signal anymore. You filter, you prioritize, you conserve energy. You've learned something most people never do. Not every battle deserves your nervous system, so you watch. You watch how people reveal their values under pressure. You watch who panics, who postures, who performs certainty when they're internally scrambling. You notice who needs control and who can live without it. You notice who talks about truth and who avoids it the moment it costs them comfort. And the more you watch, the clearer it becomes. Power isn't held by the loudest voice. It's held by the one who can wait without rotting. You've become dangerous in that way. Not because you want dominance, but because you don't need permission. Not because you seek chaos, but because you're no longer afraid of it. Chaos doesn't threaten you. It reveals things. It strips masks. It accelerates truth. And truth moves faster when systems are stressed. That's why moments like these exist. Why cracks appear. Why leaks happen. Why contradictions surface. Why institutions start contradicting themselves in public while insisting everything is under control. You notice that too. You notice how the language changes. How certainty turns into reassurance. How reassurance turns into defensiveness. How defensiveness turns into aggression. You've seen the cycle enough times to know where it leads. And you don't flinch. Because you're not invested in the illusion holding. You're invested in understanding what replaces it. That's the angel-demon paradox inside you. The part that wants truth even when it hurts. The part that can be compassionate without being naive. The part that can acknowledge darkness without becoming it. You don't romanticize the system, but you don't demonize it blindly either. You see it for what it is, a fragile agreement held together by belief and fear in equal measure. And belief is the weakest materials of all once it starts cracking. You didn't come here to save anyone. That fantasy died the moment you realized most people don't want to be saved. They want to be reassured. You don't offer reassurance, you offer awareness. And awareness is confrontational by nature. That's why your presence alone unsettles certain rooms. You don't argue. You don't debate endlessly. You don't need to dominate conversations. You ask one question, or none at all, and let the silence do the damage. You let people hear themselves. You let them feel the inconsistency in their own logic. You let reality press back. And the people who rely on momentum, on confusion, on noise, they feel exposed around you. Because you're not trying to convince. You're not trying to recruit. You're not trying to overthrow anything. You're simply not asleep. And in a world optimized for sleepwalking, that's enough to trigger alarms. You stepped somewhere forbidden because it wasn't guarded by force. It was guarded by apathy, by the unspoken agreement not to look too closely, by the comfort of letting someone else decide what's real. You broke that agreement, quietly, permanently, so now you move differently. You choose words carefully, or not at all. You pick battles that actually matter. You don't waste energy proving what you already know. You let outcomes speak louder than declarations. You understand something fundamental now. The most powerful position isn't control, it's non-attachment with clarity. And from that position, you're untouchable in ways that don't show up on any chart or threat assessment. You can step forward, you can step back, you can engage, you can disappear. You're not anchored to panic or validation or fear of being misunderstood. You already crossed the point of no return. So let them analyze patterns, let them debate motives, let them argue about intent. Let them escalate procedures and rewrite narratives. You don't need to confront the machine. You already stepped outside its assumptions. And once someone does that, the machine can only do one thing: react, while you remain still, while you watch, while you decide, on your own terms, exactly how much of what you see you ever choose to reveal. And that decision, to reveal or not, is where your real leverage lives. Because exposure isn't power, restraint is. Anyone can shout. Anyone can dump fragments into the noise and call it courage. But you understand something deeper now. Once you speak, the shape collapses. Once you name it, it becomes smaller. Once you explain it, it becomes manageable for them. So you don't rush. You let them wonder what you know. You let uncertainty do what force never could. You let absence of information stretch their imaginations into knots. You let silence turn into a mirror they can't stop staring into. That's not fear tactics. That's psychological gravity. You've learned how attention works, how obsession forms, how the mind fills gaps with worst-case scenarios. You don't need to threaten anyone. You just don't resolve the question. You leave it open. You let them sit with it, and they hate that, because systems are built to resolve, to categorize, to neutralize, to close loops. You are an open loop, a variable that refuses to settle, and open loops consume more energy than any direct threat ever could. You've felt the shift inside yourself, too. You don't crave intensity the way you used to. You don't need constant stimulation. You don't need approval to move. You've become selective, almost surgical, with where you invest attention. You understand, attention is currency, and you don't spend it impulsively anymore. That's growth forged in darkness. Pain didn't just harden you, it educated you. It taught you what actually matters when everything else falls away. It taught you how quickly people abandon principles when comfort is threatened. It taught you how rare integrity is when it isn't rewarded. And instead of becoming bitter, you became precise. You stopped confusing kindness with self-betrayal. You stopped confusing empathy with submission. You stopped confusing peace with avoidance. You learned how to hold compassion in one hand and boundaries in the other without apologizing for either. That balance, that tension, is where your power stabilizes. You're not trying to tear the world down. You're not trying to expose everything. You're not trying to become some symbol or savior. Those urges come from ego, from insecurity, from needing to be seen. You don't need to be seen. You need to be aligned with what you know, with what you won't do, with what you will walk away from even if it costs you status, comfort, or safety. Alignment creates a calm most people mistake for indifference. But it's not indifference, it's resolve without theatrics.